What's up everyone, it's Matt from surfcitytcg. I'm here with the second video in my series on Let's Downgrade Commander X. If you didn't catch my first video in this brand new series of how to downgrade a deck, please check that out. It's on Hashaton, Scarab's Fist, which I started off with a pretty high-powered list. Ended up downgrading the power level quite significantly, as well as reducing the overall cost and budget of the deck. So that's what we're going to be doing today with my SAURON the Dark Lord list. Before we get into the video, just wanted to remind everyone to please drop me a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and please leave me a comment. Leave as many comments as you're willing to. I love when people leave comments. I don't get necessarily as many as I want to, and it really helps tell YouTube that you're enjoying my content, and it helps push it out to other people and newer audiences, and I am trying to build this channel. This is something I'm kind of doing from scratch. I don't have a lot of experience, so I really appreciate all the feedback that I'm receiving, both positive and negative. I'm trying to get better based on it. So please let me know in the comments if you're liking the content. And a couple more things, please join my Discord. We have a really active Discord. It's starting to pop off a lot. We have a lot of really good discussion, deck help, card discussion, finance speculation, all sorts of things. And I play games with my Discord members all the time. So if you're interested in that, please check out the Discord. Link will be in the description below. And then I'm also starting a Patreon because, you know, I'm starting to get a little bit bigger at this point, and I just need a little bit of help in terms of time management. Like I try to help with a lot of deck requests, but it's getting to be a little overwhelming for me. So I've gone ahead and set up a Patreon, and you're absolutely under no obligation to join it, but I'd super appreciate it if you're interested in helping support me and my dream of eventually quitting my day job and being able to focus on this full time and open an LGS. That's really what I want to do. I'm really passionate about this, and any help that you're willing to give me to get there is so appreciated. So check out my Patreon. As of the time of this video being published, it might still be kind of in progress, but what I'm going to do is set up a tier system, of course, where you can sign up for whatever membership you want, but each membership is going to earn you a certain amount of credits, and I'm going to create a menu of things that you can basically save up for and purchase from me, from like deck help to all the way up to like stuff like I will play your deck for you, or I'll build a specific deck guide for you of your choice, or I'll even create a custom token for you, like hand drawn by me and signed. So that's what I'm thinking with the Patreon. If you've got any suggestions of things that I haven't included or ways you'd like to see it done a little bit differently, please let me know either in the comments on the video or by joining my Discord and just letting me know directly. Check it out. Link is in the description below. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you as a member of my Patreon soon. Thanks. All right, so let's talk about SAURON. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about what this commander does, what this deck does. If you want to see more about that, please check out my original deck guide video on SAURON the Dark Lord. I'll go ahead and link that here in the top right. Also, will be in the video description. It's a very in-depth guide, and I'd recommend you check that out first. What we're going to be talking about today, though, is how to take this bracket 4 deck, and this is definitely a bracket 4 deck. It's got 10 different game changers, 7 tutors, very, very powerful and consistent deck that performs very well. I've got tons of gameplay videos with it, and I rarely lose, so check those out if you're interested. But what we're going to talk about today is how to keep the deck doing the same thing that I've chosen to do with it. And there's tons of different ways to build SAURON. You can build him as a reanimator. You can focus on the ring temps abilities. You can build it with Nazgul, whatever you want. The way I've chosen to build it is an aristocrat style control deck that wins without infinites, but with like a lot of pingers, like stuff like Mirkwood Bats or Zulaport Cutthroat, Nadir's Nightblade. These are the ways I'm typically winning, and by sacrificing the orc army that I make every time someone casts a spell so that I can accrue repeated value from sacrificing a creature. So we're going to keep the deck doing that same thing. That is how I like to play this deck. I feel like it's the best way for my particular style. So we're going to want to keep it the same. I'm going to be focusing on 2 goals with this downgrade guide. The first one is to get us from a bracket 4 to a bracket 3. Now, if you don't know what that means and you haven't seen the Wizards article on the bracket system and the game changers, I recommend you check that out first. I will be covering like the game changers through the course of this video, but I'd recommend you read the article if you don't know about it. But our goal is to get this from a bracket 4 down to a bracket 3 while still keeping it doing relatively the same thing. And I'm actually going to try to get down to just one game changer. Oftentimes in my bracket 3s, I've been trying to play no game changers, but I'm going to make an exception in this deck and play one of them because there is a game changer that is very specific and important to SAURON. And if you haven't been able to guess what that is, it's the One Ring. And I do want to keep running the One Ring because it is too flavorful for this deck, and I just am not going to cut it. So the goal is to get us down from a bracket 4 to a bracket 3, cut all but one game changer, being the One Ring, and also get the total budget of the deck down significantly. I don't know if I want to set a specific dollar value, but I definitely want to get it down from this $3,500, and we are on the cheapest per TCG player prices as of right now. So this is obviously a lot of money, and I know that a lot of my viewers like to build on a budget or just don't have access to all of these cards. So I'm going to look to get this down to definitely under $1,000, probably even less than that. We'll see what it ends up looking like at the end. I don't want to pick a specific number right now, but I just want to say generally, I want to see this number come down quite significantly. Let's call it that. So how should we get started with knowing what to cut and what to do here? Well, like if you watched my previous video on Hashathon, we're going to follow pretty much the same process in terms of what we're cutting, what we're adding. So I'm going to start off I've already recorded a lot of the stats of this deck. So I'm going to flip over to my Google Sheets document where if we flip over to our types and tags, these are custom types and tags categories that I've set in Moxfield. You'll see where I'm going to be pulling these numbers from. I've got stuff categorized as mana and ramp, bounce, counters, draw, etc. So these are the numbers that I've pulled for the purposes of this sheet. So here are the original stats. We're starting off with a bracket 4. We have 10 game changers. The price is around $3,500 right now. Here are the numbers of these things that we have. And then these are the important ones. These categories are what we have right now. There are other categories and types and tags I have, but like these are the ones that are the most critical to the deck and that we're going to be looking to rebalance with our new version. So everything is not going to be perfectly symmetrical. For example, right now, I'm running a fairly low, I would say. For a Grixis control deck, I would normally say, 8 and 7 in terms of draw engines and single burst card draws is pretty low for a Grixis control deck. However, we're running 9 different tutors, so these are often finding these important pieces for us. So in the bracket 3 version, we're almost certainly going to be running many less tutors than this, if possibly even none, in which case this number needs to be redistributed into probably primarily the draw engines and card draw. We've got 6 board wipes, 7 pieces of spot removal right now. 6 is like high or solid on board wipes. 7's maybe a little bit low. So I'd say like this tutor number is probably going to come a little bit into removal and then more into draw engines and card draw, especially like the burst card draw is really good at getting us to the other best and critical pieces in every other category, kind of like a tutor does, right? And then the extremely important stuff for what this deck does in terms of functionality probably needs to be increased a little bit as well, because right now I'm running 7 sack outlets, and if you've seen my previous SAURON guide or read the deck guide that I have in the primer, you'll know that this is already like putting it close to being too low. 7, I think I recommend a minimum of 8 in the deck guide, but given that we're running so many tutors, you don't really need more than 1 sack outlet, assuming it doesn't get removed. So like you don't want to go too heavy on this, but when you're removing 9 tutors, like let's say this ends up coming down to 0, 7 all of a sudden is not enough. And then if we look at the sack outlets I am running, one of them is not even that consistent. Phyrexian Tower is a great sack outlet, but it can only be used once a turn, and that's not going to cut it in terms of what SAURON's looking for. So we're really only running 6, and that's very, very low. That's not going to fly in the lower powered bracket 3 list. So we're going to have to amp that up a little bit as well. So we're going to come back to this. I just wanted to show you guys where we're starting from. And then, we may or may not use these ratios. The curve is something that we're going to want to look to replicate as well. The curve right now, we'll take a glance at it in Moxfield. Yeah, the curve right now is looking pretty solid. We've got, very heavy 1s, 2s, and 3s, pretty close to equal. This is how I love a curve to look. And then a very steep drop off into the 4, 5, 6, and so forth. So this is a really nice curve as is, especially with a 6-drop commander. And we want to look to see it similar to this in the budget list. Okay, so let's get started with the cuts. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to look at things by card price. Well, actually, the first thing I'm going to do is cut all of the game changers except the One Ring. We may end up adding, 1 or 2 of these back. We do get up to 3 in a bracket 3 deck. Let's just take a quick glance at the commander brackets. So I'm not going to go over every single one, but I do want to take a quick look at the commander brackets so everyone can be on the same page in terms of what these mean. And this is all in beta. Wizards rolled this out and they said, we're testing it out. We want to see how it goes. So, all of this is subject to change, but we're going to go by what things say right now. And there are ways to kind of skirt the rules on these, like bracket 3 can still be extremely powerful. Bracket 4 and bracket 5 being CEDH, don't really even show any differences. Okay, so bracket 4 says, it doesn't give us any restrictions really. It just says play whatever you want. Explosive starts, strong tutors, cheap combos. We're not playing any combos, but this is still a very powerful deck with a lot of free counter magic, free spells, cheap interaction, a lots of game changers. We're not playing any mass land denial or any extra turns, but we can expect to see those kinds of decks when we're playing bracket 4. So this is a very strong deck right now. And what we're looking to get it down to is bracket 3 upgraded. So from optimized to upgraded. These are souped up decks. They're beyond the strength of a precon. These are all very carefully selected cards. A lot of thought has gone into choosing each slot. Games are typically quite fast, and they end faster than a precon game, of course. Generally not any 2-card infinites, so we've met that requirement already. I guess before turn 6, and then turn 7 and beyond, it's saying infinites could happen. So I think that's reasonable. And then these are the important numbers here. We're going to get access to up to 3 game changers. No mass land denial. We can have up to 3 extra turn spells. I probably won't play those just because I'm not a huge fan of them, and most people aren't either, so I tend to like to avoid them. We can play any amount of tutors, but I'm going to try to avoid tutors. This is not a requirement, it's just something that I like to do. I think tutors are great, and they're a very important part of Magic, but I also feel like they diminish the experience of a commander game, which is meant to be 100 cards, kind of random, So I like to try to avoid using tutors whenever I can because I find it to be more fun. It lets me play more interesting cards and just have games feel a little bit different all the time. And no 2-card combos, that's fine. We're not going to be playing any combos in this deck because I don't like to play with infinites, so we're not going to. So let's take a quick look at the game changers list right now, just in case you haven't seen it. Here are the game changers. Like I said, we're going to be running the One Ring because it's thematic for this deck, but we'll probably be avoiding all the other potential game changers we could be running, though in theory we could run up to 3 in a bracket 3 deck. So depending on how things are looking and what we need, I may decide to throw in another 1 or 2. Or at minimum, I'll talk through some options of the best ones for you. In fact, let's just do that right now. Okay, so we're going to ignore white and green, and because we're not playing those colors, obviously. So let's talk through the options in blue, and I will tell you the ones that I think are the best fit for this deck, and the ones that I probably wouldn't bother with in this particular deck. So Cyclonic Rift is always going to be number 1 as a potential option. It's just There's nothing like it. It's the ultimate board wipe. It gets around almost any form of protection, with the exception of cards like Teferi's Protection and Clever Concealment. Aside from those effects, this deals with almost everything that opponents have at instant speed. It's everything you want because you can cast it right before you untap, and then you have a huge turn going against a completely empty board. So Cyclonic Rift definitely in the top 3 of the game changers you'd want. If you're trying to make this as strong of a bracket 3 deck as you possibly can, Cyclonic Rift is a card that you're going to want as one of your 3 game changers, definitely. Expropriate is a really strong and powerful card. This isn't really the deck for it. Grixis is one of the least... Grixis is probably one of the worst colors in terms of ramp and mana development. I'd say white and green are the best colors at ramping, followed by probably either red or black might be sort of tied, and then blue being the worst. So we are pretty much the 3 worst colors for mana and ramp, which means a card like Expropriate, although it's very powerful, is not necessarily what this deck wants to be doing. I would reserve playing this card. First of all, I wouldn't play this card because I think it's gross, but if you want to play it, then I would stick to playing it in green decks where you can get a lot of mana really quickly. That's when you're going to find a card like this to be very powerful. Now, Force of Will, on the other hand, free counterspell, always good, especially in a deck with a 6 mana commander that you really want to stick, and that isn't that good at mana and ramp like we just talked about. That's where you find true power in a card like Force of Will. Now, the problem with Force of Will is that you need a pretty decent critical mass of blue cards to pitch to it, because it's free, sure, but you do need a blue card, and that is not insignificant when you're playing a 3-color deck. So if you're playing Force of Will, which again, we're not going to, but maybe if you were choosing to play Force of Will, you'd want to play a package of blue game changers. So like, for example, I think the One Ring is always going to be probably the best game changer for this deck, not just because it's thematic, but because it's just so damn good. It's like ridiculously good. So I think playing the One Ring is a given, but if you wanted to play Force of Will, I would suggest playing it in conjunction with a card like either Cyclonic Rift or Rhystic Study, as opposed to like a black or red card or something like that. Fierce Guardianship is normally one of the game changers I will go to if I'm playing blue. However, this is not necessarily the best deck for it because SAURON costs 6 mana. So getting it Fierce Guardianship to be free is a little bit more difficult. Like once you've got SAURON in play, you're kind of in good shape already. His ward is very difficult to pay. It's kind of hard to remove him. It's not to say like Fierce isn't good. I certainly play it in the bracket 4 version, but it's just a little bit less good in this deck than it is in other decks. Same goes for something like Juska's Will. If you've got SAURON in play, you're kind of already winning, and then a card like Juska's Will doesn't help quite as much. Again, not saying it's not great, it's still excellent, but if you're having to choose just 3 game changers, I would say like the ones we want to go with in this deck. If you just want the absolute best, I'm going to tell you right now, I'd say go with the One Ring, Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor. You can't really go wrong with those 3. You could also swap like Vampiric Tutor. I think Demonic Tutor is the best, just to be clear, the best tutor in the game. It's only 2 mana. It puts it directly into your hand. Close second is Vampiric Tutor. Sometimes even better, like if you put a card with Miracle on top of your library, that can be very, very broken with a Vampiric Tutor. Vampiric Tutor into that, extra turn spell, Temporal Mastery, I think it's called. You're like, oh, well, it's a miracle. I drew it right after I put it on top of my library, So Vampiric Tutor can be better in certain decks, but I'd say in general, like if as a rule, Demonic Tutor is the way to go. So the One Ring, Demonic Tutor, Cycrift, that's a killer combination. But if you want to play Force of Will because you like it or you have one and whatever, then I'd say like go with a blue card package, maybe something like Force of Will and Cycrift. You could go Force of Will, Cycrift, Rhystic Study instead of the One Ring. Like let's say you don't have a One Ring, but you have Rhystic Study, you can do like this package, right? And then if you're playing Force of Will, Cycrift, and Rhystic Study, then you can also run something like Force of Negation, which also pitches a blue card, March of Swirling Mist, which pitches blue cards. You want to go with that theme. That's not what we're going to do. I'm just like recommending certain packages and ways to think about it if you're building your deck a little bit custom versus the way I'm going to end up building it. So we sort of covered a lot of these cards. We're not playing Thassa's Oracles combos. That's inappropriate for bracket 3 and always will be. I wouldn't even play this in bracket 4 personally. I think, you maybe could get away with it, but I'm not a fan of this card. Urza, this is not the deck for. Mystical Tutor is good, but it's certainly worse than other options we have when we are limited to only 3 game changers, so we're not going to be playing that. Jin-Gitaxias, in my opinion, doesn't even deserve to be on this list. I don't think it's a very good card. Certainly not for this deck. This is not the deck for it. Bolas the Citadel is an amazing card, but this is not the deck for it. We're going to be playing more of a control strategy, which has a lot of high mana value stuff. This is not what we want to be doing. Demonic Tutor, Imperial Seal, Vampiric Tutor, all extremely good. I already sort of talked about them. Nothing more to say there. Op Agent is a higher bracket card to me, so we're not doing that. Hergrid is a commander. Adnaz, we're not doing. Juska's, I talked about. Breach could be good in this deck. I don't play a lot with Breach. It's more of a high-powered card. If you were running it, I would say, focus on, I don't even know, more artifact mana goes with Breach, I guess, but not really what we want to be doing in this deck. None of these multicolor cards need to apply for this. And then the colorless stuff, we talked about the One Ring. The Moxes are very, very good. I think they're also extremely good in this deck. If you wanted to run a package of the One Ring, Chrome Mox, and Mox Diamond, I think that's a good build. It does seem a little too high powered for bracket 3, just in my opinion. This is pure, nothing. You're allowed to do that. I'm not saying you're not allowed to do it. It just, to me, I play a lot of games and that feels inappropriate. If I busted out at turn 1, the One Ring by playing Ancient Tomb, or I guess you need a Lotus Petal. You go Chrome Mox, Ancient Tomb, Lotus Petal, the One Ring. On turn 1, people would just be rolling their eyes or rage quitting right then. So I'd say avoid playing the Moxes, and LED too, Lines Out Diamond. These cards are super game changers, so to speak. This is just me saying this. This is not anything Wizards had said, but trust my experience. Don't play those cards in bracket 3. You're not going to have a good time. Tabernacle too. If you're fortunate to own this $2,000 card, I don't recommend playing it at bracket 3. People won't be pleased. So we are going to play the One Ring. Ancient Tomb's a great choice for this deck. As a game changer, we're probably not going to run it, but it is an excellent choice, as is Mana Vault, because we want to be ramping. Mana Vault's very much like a colorless ritual, like a dark ritual, but it's a gray ritual or brown ritual, so to speak. In that you get one use out of it. Of course, there are ways to untap it and be sneaky, but we wouldn't be doing that in this deck. We'd just be playing it for the one-time burst of mana, just to get SAURON out fast and then kind of snowball some advantage from there. So that's it on Game Changers. So before we get started, the first thing I'm going to do, and you can absolutely follow this method as well, is take my deck list from right here, and we're going to duplicate it. So I'm going to make a copy. So to do that, we're just going to go to More and Duplicate. It's that simple. And then, sure, we'll copy the primer, we'll copy the card tags. You can either do this or not, depending on what you want. And I'm going to change this to SAURON Downgraded. So now my other deck list will remain clean and unmodified because we've made a copy of that list, and now we're going to make the changes to this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sort by, so I'm going to change the grouping to no grouping, so everything's just all together. It's not separated by anything. It's just all main deck, 99, just like that, right? And then I'm going to sort by price. And if you haven't already done this, if you're new to Moxfield or something, recommend you go into your settings and set how you want your pricing to be. Right now, mine's set to TCG Player Low based on market price, which is, I like to buy from TCG Player, but if you're a fan of Card Kingdom, Star City Games, there may be some other options in there. You can set the pricing to pull from those places instead. but I'm pulling from TCG Player Low. I'm making sure we're on update to cheapest, so it's going to pull whatever the current prices are as of right now, and then I'm going to sort by price. And then if you're not showing prices, you can add it by going into advanced and click on include extra data. These two are not on by default. I recommend including them. And then we're going to just start cutting right from the bottom here. So I'm going to be using the keyboard shortcut, which is I'm going to move these to considering. So I'm going to use Alt F4. And we're just basically going to cut everything. I'm going to actually cut all the game changers first. Let me just do that. So you can tell what's a game changer because it's got this little symbol right here. So all the game changers that we're currently running, and if you hover over the bracket info at the top, it also lists them there for you. So we're going to cut all of them except for the One Ring, just for now. We may end up adding these back, but I just want to start off by going from a clean slate. So putting these all into considering by hitting Alt F4. We're keeping the One Ring. Okay, I think that's all of them. Let's just check the bracket info again. Yep, we're down to one, just the One Ring, so perfect. So now I want to start looking from the perspective of what are the really expensive cards here, because one of our goals is not just reducing the bracket, but reducing the cost of this deck. So I'm going to start off by cutting the 3 OG dual lands. These are phenomenal, and if you have them, great. You absolutely don't need them. In fact, if we look at what percentage of the price of this deck, besides those game changers, is in the land, you're going to see, $2,300. So if we were to replace every single land in the deck with basics, it's going to be worse, sure. But is it going to be usable? Absolutely. You do not need all of these expensive lands to play Magic, period. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that your deck won't be better if you have all the lands that I have. But when you're playing a 6-mana commander that is just focusing on ramping, especially with a lot of artifacts early game, you do not need all of these lands. If you swap these out for reasonable ratio of basics and maybe whatever shock lands and maybe you have a handful of lands, don't play any lands that come into play tapped. The only exception is the Surveil lands. Those are phenomenal. There's a couple of other extremely small exceptions, but in general, I would tell you, do not play lands that come in tapped. Just play basics instead. Seriously. And join my Discord if you ever need any help with building a mana base or what lands to run. I'm really good at this and I can help you. So check me out. We're going to cut all the expensive lands. And I'm going to show you guys that this deck is still playable without all of this. Because if we were to cut $2,400 from this, look at that. We're down to $500 at that point. And that's still running all these expensive cards like Deflecting Spot, Force of Negation, Mana Drain. We're probably going to end up cutting these as well. So I want to get the deck down to as cheap as possible, but still feeling like a bracket 3 and still being powerful and strong. So that's the goal here. So let's just start chopping. Whoops, I'm hitting the wrong hotkey. So I'm going to leave in the on-color fetch lands for now. We may end up cutting them, but I think it's appropriate to run those in a bracket 3 deck, so I'm going to leave them for now. We'll cut Otawara, even though it's quite good. I'd rather err on the side of cutting more. We can always add some back. I'm going to leave the Battle Bond lands in for now. I think most people have these, and they're certainly not inappropriate for this bracket. I'm also going to leave the shock lands for the same reason, but we'll see what price is looking like at the end, and then I may come back and chop some of these, but we'll see. We'll leave the Surveil land. Blackgate's okay, I think. Yeah, the rest of these we'll cut Maze. Mount Doom is nice. I think we need Cave. Bog for now. Tower Exotic. Island. Okay. So we're going to certainly have to add back some more lands, but we've gotten it down to $100 or so. So that's pretty good. All right. Let's switch back to no grouping. So we can just look at the most expensive cards and probably just them. Definitely don't need Childred, even in a bracket 4. I'm on the fence about playing that card, but it is quite good. Force, we're cutting. Altar we're going to keep. This is probably one of the cards we're going to splurge on for a bracket 3 deck because it is so extremely important to the strategy and there's very few better options. We'll take a look at replacement options, but we're going to end up having, like I talked about earlier, we're going to end up having to add more sacrifice outlets. So I definitely want to avoid cutting better ones right now. And Phyrexian Altar is best of the best. Reflecting Swat, we don't need it. It's expensive. Mandrain, we don't need it. It's expensive. Extremely good in this deck, but let's try to do without it. All right, the Bowmasters, let's cut them, but they're appropriate, so I wouldn't mind leaving them in, but let's just get them out. All right, Shadow Spear is another card that I think is extremely important to the functionality of this deck. So I'm gonna hold off on cutting it for now. I think it's too important to what this deck is trying to do. This is a control deck, and it really needs to be able to stabilize late game, and this is an excellent way to do it. We could replace this with something like Loxodon Warhammer, though, so I might consider doing that, especially since we're cutting Urza's Saga, which is a card that really makes Shadow Spear a lot better. All right, Tarn's good. Meathook Massacre is really a vital and thematic and important card in this deck. It's doing aristocrat things. It's a board wipe. I think it's the perfect card. And if you are investing in cards to own for the future, Meathook Massacre is a great one to pick up, especially for this price. It won't be this price for very long. It just got a reprint in Innistrad Remastered. This was previously a $40, $50 card. Recommend you pick up one around this price if you can. Aghanim's, we can probably do without. I love this card, but, I don't think we necessarily need it. Palantir, let's leave it for now. It's, I have a soft spot for these thematic cards, so I don't think this card, by the way, is particularly good. I think it's fine. I do think it's worse than Phyrexian Arena, for example. I know maybe a lot of people will disagree with me when I say that, but the problem with Palantir is that good players will just have you mill the first 2, maybe even 3 times, which means you're not really getting a consistent draw engine. And to rely on it for mill, if you're playing this for self-mill and discard, is not consistent either, because, eventually people, or even the first time, depending on who you choose, they might just always have you draw. So I don't like these cards that give your opponents the decision, because opponents don't always do what you will expect, and they don't always make the quote-unquote right play either, and that can sometimes backfire when you're expecting one thing and another thing happens. That being said, I like how on theme it is for this deck, so that's the reason I was playing it before, and that's the reason why I may play it now as well. Okay, so Tezzeret is a tutor. However, I may end up keeping this. Let's leave it for now at a little under $15. It's an expensive card, but this is functionally a second copy of the One Ring in our deck. It does not give you protection when you search up the One Ring using his -4, but just getting the One Ring in play on turn 5 is too good to pass up, so we'll leave him for now. Snapcaster, I don't think we're going to need. Let's move him. Yawgmoth, we're not cutting. He's come down in price a lot, so this is a very good price for him. He's extremely good in this deck. We need sack outlets. We're not cutting him. Dictate, we are going to cut. This card is gross. I wouldn't play it at bracket 3 ever. I don't like it. I don't like the kind of gameplay it leads to. It's, to me, not appropriate bracket 3. That's just my opinion. Same goes with Grave Pact. All right, Black Market Connections we'll keep. It's too busted. Swan Song is a little expensive, but let's leave it for now. We're going to leave these. Reaver Cleaver is phenomenal in this deck. We're not cutting it. So everything else I'm going to leave for now. We'll take a look more specifically in a minute, but take a look where the price is now. We're already down to $421, down from $3,500. So I think we've done a pretty good job thus far. Now, of course, we're going to have to add more cards to get back up to 100 because we're down 40 right now. So the price is going to come back up a little bit. But I think this is a very good starting point. We've brought down the price very substantially. And I think that I've already achieved my goal by doing this. We'll, of course, have to reevaluate once I add back in the other stuff, but I think we're in pretty good shape here. So what I want to do now is record our deck stats as of this point when we're at 60 cards. And by doing so, that's going to help us understand what we need to add and then like what to look for. We can look through, I have a lot of cards in considering already, so we can look through there. But I'm also going to show you guys how to use the Scryfall search and the API, the EDHRec API, to find stuff to add. But first things first, I want to take a look and record the deck stats. So let's do that right now. So let's take a look at where we are after the initial cuts. So we're down from 100 to 60 cards. We've cut 40. So obviously a lot of these are going to come down pretty substantially. So game changers from 10 to 1, as we expected. Price down about $3,100, pretty good. These numbers aren't that important. We're going to skip over them for now. Average mana value, this is an interesting one to look at, but it's probably skewed because we have a weird number of lands right now, so we'll probably just ignore this one too for now. These are the important things, and this is going to inform what we're looking to add. So let's take a look here. So after the cuts, we've come down 3 on mana ramp plus treasures, and I do have them split out within the formula. You can see like 14 normal mana ramp, 4 treasure. I like to split these out in the categories because one represents permanent mana versus like burst mana. So 18 down to 15, so we definitely want to amp that up a little bit. This is a very mana hungry deck that wants to play SAURON fast. So we're going to talk more about that in a bit and what we can add to replace what was removed. Draw engines and single burst draw hardly came down at all, just 1. However, as I mentioned earlier, the fact that tutors is coming down and probably will continue to come down from this point is going to mean that we need to add some replacements in these areas because that's the kind of stuff we would have been looking for. Board wipes down from 6 to 5. This should be fine. Removal down from 7 to 4. Definitely something that we need to add more on. 7 was already low. We want this number to come up. So I'm going to highlight the places where I feel like we need to put some attention, which is going to be most of it. I think tutors and board wipes are fine. Removal definitely needs to be pumped back up. Counterspells and protection for sure we need to replace some of that stuff we cut. Sack outlets we want to amp up, and we want to amp up this number. So all of these highlighted in yellow are places we want to address. Only tutors and board wipes can probably look to either stay the same or come down even further. And then let's see how our curve has changed. So we lost all of our 0 drops, which makes sense. You know, the reason cards are expensive often is because they're free to cast. You know, it's the closest thing you can come to legally cheating in Magic is playing a free counterspell, playing a free removal spell. So by cutting the most expensive cards, we're seeing this number come down a lot. I would love to get the number up, but there's not a ton of free things that can necessarily fall within a normal budget. So we'll take a look at it, but likely that this will not be able to move this number too much. 1 drops at 12 looks fine to me. You know, honestly, like this curve still looks okay. Maybe we need to amp up our 2 drops a little bit. This 16 at 3 might need to come down a tad, but it looks okay. And then all of our top end, we probably need a tiny bit more. I don't want to like focus too much here. I just want to call out generally the areas I might be considering. But in general, I'd say we just need kind of a little bit of everything. So I think we will do 1 round of ads and kind of just skim through the list and see like, okay, this looks like a fine replacement for now, and not even worry about categories. And once we start getting closer to the full deck size, then I'll start to refine by category. So now that we've cut a bunch of stuff, let's add some stuff back. How do we do that? Well, if you didn't catch my series on how to build a deck completely from scratch, I featured Edgar Markov. I'll go ahead and link it here and in the description below. It was a long series, like 8 videos, I believe, where I extensively covered how to build a deck completely from scratch. We did a bunch of iterations, testing, practice hands. It's a great video series. with a ton of useful information. It's a lot to digest in one sitting, but it's there for you. I'd recommend you check that out. I'm going to cover some things that we did in that video, but definitely not everything. What I want to start with is, I know I mentioned looking through my considering section, but if you don't have a considering section, or if you're like new to this, what I'd recommend starting off with before you do anything else at this point is using this EDHRecs button that is available in Moxfield. I think other deck building sites have something like this as well. And what it is it's an API that connects to EDHRec. EDHRec is a data aggregator that scrapes deck lists from all over the internet, not just from Moxfield, but from every deck building site that they have access to, and it compiles all of that data. Then it compares the cards that you're currently running based on this commander to all of its database of deck lists, and says, okay, like, given that you're running all of these cards, you probably want to also play these cards because, you know, it knows what is most similar to what it thinks you're trying to do based on budget, card selection, etc. So this isn't perfect, but it's a really, really good starting point and can certainly give us some ideas and some options. So I'm going to run through this once, and then I'll either add stuff directly to the main deck from here, or I'll put it in considering. And then once I do that one time, then we'll go through my considering and look what we need to add from that point. So let's get started. All right, so it's suggesting basics. We probably should have like at least one of each basic, so it stopped suggesting them. Let's add the missing shockland that we don't already have. I don't like triumphs. Period. I don't play lands that come into play tapped, except for the surveil lands. Those are the only lands that are good enough to play, in my opinion, that enter tapped. Otherwise, like, drawing this when you really are desperate for a land is just devastating, and the cycling is not worth it. It's just so expensive. So let's add the missing battle bond land, because those are great. We'll go ahead and add the talisman for now. We do need to add more mana. I think I'm playing the blue-black one already, but we will play the other two. Relic of Sauron's probably good enough at this point, so let's add that, and it's obviously on theme. These check lands are pretty good. We may end up adding them. I'm going to just put them in considering for now. These are usually better than basics, but sometimes they enter tapped, and that can be quite annoying. I think it'll end up being good enough for this deck, but I always love these lands. The pain lands, though, I do like. I think we will play those. 1 damage is negligible, and these are great. So I'm not going to talk about every single card. I want this to get through this relatively quickly. I think I'm going to avoid the signets for this deck. Signets are worse than the talismans because they can't generate a single mana. So, you know, there are times where, let's say you have a Mystic Remora in your hand and you really want to play it, but you also want to ramp. Like, you've got only 2 land open, so you can play a talisman and then cast a Mystic Remora, but you can't ever play a Dimir Signet and then cast a Mystic Remora. So that's one example of where these can kind of mess you up, and I don't like them as much for that reason. I do play them usually in 2-color decks, but in a 3-color deck, I think we have some better options that we could play instead. All right, we certainly want an offer you can't refuse. This is a phenomenal counterspell. It's excellent in any blue deck. Fierce, we're probably going to skip for now just because it's pricey. It's also a game changer, which I think is indicated not here, not indicated here. I wish they would do that. Let's throw in Chaos Warp for now. Nazgul, like, a lot of people like to run these because it's thematic. They're not good, but if you want to run them, I understand. It's just going to be a lot harder to build the deck because you have to deal with 9 bad cards, like, clogging up your deck. And, you know, they're not terrible. They replace themselves, right? Whenever the ring tempts you. No, these cards are just bad. Like, the ring tempts you, so, like, you can get draw triggers off it by, like, utilizing Sauron synergy with that. So if you want to play the Nazgul, I'd say, like, lean more into a Reanimator strategy, because you'll end up having the option to discard your hand, draw 4 pretty often, and that can help when you're running Reanimator. But I'm not going to play these because they're bad. They're also quite expensive. All right, we're going to skip all this junk. We don't need Anger. Anger is a phenomenal card. just not the deck for it. This is a card I want to play more of, and it is quite good in this deck. Let's try it out. Windfall we might play. Animate Dead is really good in this deck, but it's like maybe the second best reanimation spell there is. But I don't really want to be playing other creatures, and sending Sauron to the graveyard if he dies is so risky, because if they counter your reanimation spell and then you don't have another one, then he's just kind of stranded in your graveyard, and that's really bad. This deck is very reliant on the commander. It can't very easily win without it. Definitely want Ashnod's Altar. Excellent in this deck, and a good price. I think we want to add the missing Surveillance, although they're pretty pricey. So Vandal Blast is probably a good option. We'll consider it at least. All right, let's add the other missing Surveillance. These lands, Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse, don't play them ever. Okay, so never is extreme. I would only play them in a budget landfall deck. Otherwise, these cards are really bad. Diabolic Intent is a cute one, but it's very reliant on us having our commander, so it's kind of win more. Plus, I want to avoid tutors. Mindstone, probably not. I almost never run this card anymore, especially not in a 3-color deck. Maybe a 1 monocolor deck only. So that was one run through. We should be up to like 75 now. Yeah, 77, pretty close. I want to capture our stats again at this point, so I'm going to do that real quick. After that first round of ads, I've gone ahead and re-updated our numbers here to show what we still need and where we want to make some changes. So our original deck started with 100 cards. We cut down to 60, which I've got the list here. And then we added a few via the EDHRecs API. We're up to 77 now, so we've got 23 left to go. And we still need 16 land. So of those 23, 16 need to be land, assuming you want to keep the land count the same, which I do. Meaning we only have room to add 7 cards as it stands. So where do we specifically want to make changes? So obviously we need to add 16 land, so we're going to assume we're going to do that. But then from among these, what I've gone and done is highlighted in green the areas where I think we want to add more, and I've listed the number we're approximately looking to add here. And then I've highlighted in reds areas where I think we want to maybe cut a few, and I've put the negative numbers there. So from this list, we've got a total of 8, which is 1 over what we need. So we might need to cut 1 more somewhere else, but we'll feel that out as we go. So I've gone ahead and screenshotted this so we can kind of refer to it quickly. So let's head back to the deck list and see what we need to do. So I'd like to start off by looking at the areas where we potentially want to cut, which is, I didn't talk about it, but maybe mana ramp treasure. We might want to get this down by a point. This is a little high. I was pretty happy with it at 18, so I might look to shave our additional card from there. And then we'll look at tutors and board wipes to see if we have any obvious cuts. So let's take a look at mana and ramp first. I've gone ahead and sorted by my types and tags, and then sorted by mana values so we can see things by curve. So let's just look through every single one and see where it makes sense to make some cuts. Dark Ritual's phenomenal. We're not going to cut it. Expedition Map. So this is a good one. We didn't see this when we made our initial cuts because I was just sorting by like the most expensive cards, but there are going to be cards like this that are a relic of the older deck and were a critical piece when we were running things like Cabal Coffers and Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. We cut those because they're expensive, so it doesn't make sense to be playing Expedition Map anymore. We don't have any lands that we're desperate to find, so this isn't really as important anymore. It's going to lower our mana and ramp by 1. It's also going to lower our tutor count by 1. So this is an important side note. We're going to end up lowering both categories by 1, the mana and ramp and the tutors, but since this card was in both categories, it's only 1. So looking at this count isn't always necessarily going to make sense, but it's okay. This doesn't need to be perfect. We'll get it right in the end. So we're going to cut Expedition Map because we cut the critical lands to find. What I also then want to do is consider cutting Trinket Mage, because a lot of times I would be Trinket Maging to get the Expedition Map so I could find Cabal Coffers or Urborg and make a ton of mana with those. But since we're not running those anymore, is Trinket Mage still worth it? I think it is. And the reason why is we are running, let's just switch back to regular types and see how many targets we have. We want to have at least 2, and we do. Shadow Spear and Soul Ring. Of course, you want to usually get Soul Ring, but like you want to have an option to find something else, because if you've got no targets, that sucks. It will happen occasionally, but like in general, I think if you've got 2 targets, you'll be fine most of the time. And Trinket Maging for Soul Ring doesn't necessarily get us to be playing SAURON on turn 4, because if we play Trinket Mage on turn 3, grab Soul Ring, we can't cast it right away. We can cast it the following turn, but the turn you cast a Soul Ring, you're really only netting 1 mana, because you paid 1 for the cost of it, and then it generates 2, so you're +1. But if we've only played on curve to that point, it's turn 4, we have 4 lands, we're not landing SAURON on turn 4 with just a Trinket Mage and a Soul Ring. However, if we play any of these 2 mana rocks on turn 2, then we play Trinket Mage turn 3, we can drop the Soul Ring right away, and then we easily cast SAURON the following turn. For this reason, like the ability to cast SAURON on turn 4, I also really like Coalition Relic and Worn Power Stone. These are phenomenal cards that are especially good when your commander is 6 mana, because they allow you to play it as your only mana rock on turn 3. You play Worn Power Stone on turn 3 with 3 land. You untap the following turn, you've got your 3 land, you play your land for turn, so you're up to 4, and then this makes 2. You can cast SAURON on turn 4 with just this single card. Same goes for Coalition Relic. This can burst you into a 2 mana turn if you spend a turn not using it by charging it instead. So these 2 cards are really, really strong in a SAURON deck. And the fact that SAURON's ward is quite difficult to pay, you have to sacrifice a legendary creature or artifact in order to be able to target him. You know, running him out on turn 4 is usually quite safe. You can still get hit by like a Soul Shatter or Sheoldred's Edict, which will really ruin your day. And it will happen sometimes. I mean, good players are going to mulligan for those cards against SAURON, because SAURON is scary and they need a way to deal with him. So just keep that in mind. You know, a lot of times if you assume your opponents have the worst case scenario, you'll never be disappointed. Sometimes you've got to just go for it, because like, you know, you got to play to your outs, and sometimes you need to take some risks. That's just part of any game. But just keep in mind that there are some things that really will get SAURON pretty well. Okay, let's take a look at our other ramp. We did already shave 1, so we're in good shape. I like it. I like all of these. I think these are all the best 2 mana rocks. I wouldn't consider running any of the colorless ones in a deck like this, because it's just a 3-color deck. We need really as much color as we can get in terms of the mana we're making. So I wouldn't consider running ones like Liquid Metal Torque, Thought Vessel, anything like that. It's probably not worth it here. All right, Ashnod's Altar is good. Crowded Crypt I love. This card is just a mana rock that can end up winning you the game late game. You know, sometimes you've got a Mirkwood bets out. This can just end the game, because like you crack it, you make 10 zombies. That deals 10 to everyone. You sack all 10 to any sort of sack outlet. That's another 10 to everyone. Assuming you have some sort of aristocrat in play, like a Mirkwood Bats or a Zulaport Cutthroat. This card's usually just a mana rock that has a huge threat level late game. Dak Faden's a card that I'm a tremendous fan of. I mean, he is the greatest thief in the multiverse after all. The way I like to consider this card is just as a 3 mana sorcery. You know, pretend none of the Planeswalker text exists, and this is just 1 blue-red, steal an artifact. Any other value you get out of him is great. That's just all gravy. But 3 mana steal a Soul Ring, like, that's such a huge tempo swing, right? You gain a Soul Ring, they lose a Soul Ring, huge. He can let you ramp out a SAURON on turn 4 if you do that. You know, there's not always going to be a Soul Ring to steal, but if there's not, you're in good shape anyway, because no one had a turn 1 Soul Ring. But if they did get the turn 1 Soul Ring, like seems to happen all the time against me, then boom, Dak Vaden comes down, yoink, now it's yours. And that's it. If Dak Vaden goes away, it's still yours. They don't get it back. The only way they get it back is if they blink it, or something like that. It depends on the blink. All right, so I'm happy with the rest of these. Let's take a look at the treasure. All of this stuff looks great, so I'm not going to cut any more mana ramp. What are the other categories where we wanted to cut? Tutors and board wipes. So we already cut one tutor. Fabricate is great. It lets you play a turn for the One Ring. I think we want to run it, probably. In Trinket Mage, Tezzeret, we already talked about. I'm happy with down to 3 tutors. I think that's completely reasonable for a deck like this, especially given that we're running pretty inexpensive ones relatively. I'm just going to update the cheapest again to make sure we have the cheapest versions of everything, and we do. So if I were to cut anywhere out of these, I guess I would cut Tezzeret, because he's a pretty high-powered card. But in general, I think all of these are pretty fair. We're not running any of the like ultra powerful tutors, and we're only running one game changer. So I think it's not unreasonable that we play some ways to find our best card, especially since we're playing Sauron. He's looking for the damn ring, you know? All right, so let's look at board wipes. We're a little heavy on those, although Mount Doom's like, it is a board wipe potentially, but like you're not going to use it that way very frequently. The rest of these, Blast Act is great, Toxic Deluge, Blastiotic, these are the best in class. Vandal Blast is like, I like playing Vandal Blast in a control style deck like this, where you want the game to go long, you're playing an attrition strategy, and you're really going to suffer from opponents having a lot of artifacts in play. That's when I like to play Vandal Blast. I think it makes sense here versus like in an aggro deck where you could potentially just kill them and not worry about them trying to accrue some like late game value. And Meat Hook Massacre, we already talked about. It fills 2 very critical roles for this deck in both a board wipe and an aristocrat style effect. So I think I'm very happy with the selection here. If I were to cut anything, it would be Vandal Blast. All right, so we're good there. Let's look at potentially adding a draw engine, a card draw, some removal, like 4 pieces of removal potentially, a couple counters, a sack outlet, and an aristocrat effect. I'll start off by looking at considering, but I also want to show you guys how to find this stuff. And if you haven't already, I think I mentioned earlier, but if you haven't checked out my series on Edgar Markov and how to build a commander deck completely from scratch, I go through very extensive examples of how to use Scryfall search in an advanced way, use the Scryfall tagger. So please check out those videos. There's a bunch of timestamps and like contents markers in those videos so you can find exactly what you're looking for. It's a huge series that I spend a lot of time on, so please check that out. But I'm going to show you guys very quickly how to use EDHRecs and how to use the Scryfall tagger, because it is a very powerful tool. So let's take one where we're just looking for a single card, like let's say sack outlets. So I probably already have some in my considering, but let's say we didn't, right? This is a deck I've been building out for a long time, so it's got a lot of stuff already. But let's say we didn't have that. We just knew, like, I've got these sack outlets. I really want to add one more. I don't know how to find those. So the easiest way to find them, in my opinion, is to take one that you really like. So take your best one. Let's say Phyrexian Altar, for example. We're going to open up what's called the Scryfall tagger, and we're going to search for this card there. Okay. So what the Scryfall tagger is like crowdsourced project where people add these what are called oracle tags. There's also artwork tags. So if you're looking for, a bunch of cards that have pictures of altars, you can use this to find it. But the ones we care about are down here, which are the oracle tags. And what you're going to want to do is you can look at the definition of it, and it will usually like explain. This one's self-explanatory, I think, so you don't need it to explain. But you're going to pick the one that you think makes sense. And the one we care about for this deck is Sacrifice Outlet Creature. Because just to recap, if you didn't watch my Sauron guide, please do that first. But what we're trying to do in this deck is get Sauron out, and then anytime someone casts a spell, an opponent, we amass an orc army. Amass means that we create an orc army token that's a 0/0 and put a +1 counter on it. Or if we already have an orc army token, we just put a +1 counter on it. So you never can create 2 orc armies without doing some weird shenanigans. You just either create one if you don't have one, or you add a +1 counter to the one you have. So the army you have gets bigger, or you create a new one. So what I designed this deck to do is anytime someone casts a spell, sacrifice the orc army that we have that's a 1/1, then the trigger for Sauron goes off, we create a new one, rinse and repeat. So by doing this, every time we're creating a new creature, which triggers like ETB effects. Like if we had an Impact Charmers, it would do 1 to everyone. Or better yet, if we have something like a Mirkwood Bats, which is one of the best cards in the deck, we're going to make an Orc army. It's going to ping everyone for 1. Then we're going to sack it to one of our sack outlets. Let's say it's Goblin Bombardment. We're going to sack that Orc, deal 1 damage to any creature or player. And then we're going to create the new one. Rinse and repeat. Every single time someone plays a spell, we do 2 damage to all players, and we get to ping something for 1 damage. Insane, right? That's what this deck's looking to do. And that's why we need more effects to be able to sacrifice creatures for free. The free part is critical. In fact, we could use this free sacrifice outlet tag as well, because if we just look for sacrifice outlet creature, it's going to show ones that have costs. I think that's fine. We'll start by looking for this, and then if we need to refine it by adding this, we'll do that. So let's flip back. We'll go to the advanced search here. I'm going to put order EDHRecs, so it's going to show me the most popular EDHRec cards first. And then I'm going to put OTag, which is the shortcut for Oracle tag. And it was sacrifice outlet creature. Let's see what we get. All right, so we know we already have these because it's already showing 1, right? And then it's showing us these like single-use ones, which are fine, but this is not necessarily what we want in terms of a sacrifice outlet. We want these repeatable ones. So let's just flip back. Is there a thing that said repeatable? There is not, but maybe like the free part implies that. So maybe we should add the free. So let's add that. Free outlet, and now see what we find. Okay, so we've got the top 4, which is great. Altar of Dementia is one we could add. This is a very good one, but it's a little bit dangerous because milling people, we could mill ourselves, right? And that's fine. Milling ourselves is usually the way to go if you're running a card like this. I think it's a decent option for us. I don't know if it's the one we want. It's also a little expensive. It's possible. Let's put it in considering. Okay, these are already in considering, so we'll come back to that. This can only sacrifice goblins, so we don't want that. In fact, there's a lot of goblins, so let's just filter those out. So let's go minus. This is going to exclude the word goblin from our search. And, you know, if you want to learn more about how to use the Scryfall tags and how to use the syntax and stuff, check out my How to Build a Deck from Scratch video. I talk a lot about that. You can also check out, like, the Command Zone has a really good video on how to use Scryfall, and that's one that I would recommend checking out as well. But definitely my How to Build a Deck from Scratch series is going to teach you a lot more about how to use this stuff. I don't want to go into it too much in this video. All right, we've already got all these. This one is Merfolk only, so we'll skip that. All right, so we're getting down, as we get further down in the list, since we sorted by EDHRec, we're going to see worse and worse options generally. So like, these are going to get worse. We want to go with one of these that we have in considering. So that's how you look for a card in conjunction with the Scryfall tagger. So let's take a look at the sacrifice outlets we have in considering and figure out which one we want. We want one of the repeatable ones for sure. So I think Carrion Feeder is a good option. It's only 1 mana, so that's nice. The problem is it's a creature, so it's a little bit more fragile, but it is a very good one in general. Altar, I think, is a strong choice. Let's update to cheapest again, make sure we've got the least expensive versions. Okay, so it's a little under $10, not terrible. This is probably the best one, to be honest. But I'm also looking at stuff like Wowstrider or Yahenni are good. You know, Yahenni's nice, it'll get huge, but it doesn't have any evasion. We don't have any real ways to give it evasion, so it's not that great. Wowstrider, being able to scry 1 is nice. We've already got Viserys here, but Wowstrider's just kind of a nice, like, another option. We can also play it from our graveyard if we have to escape it. That's, you know, a good option. I think I'm going to go with the Altar. I just want to caution you that, like, don't just pick an opponent at random to use this on, because, like, milling people will not only piss them off, but it will probably help them. And, you know, they won't realize and they'll just be mad at you. But, you know, it's a lose-lose for you. So I'd say, like, target yourself with this in general and don't worry about where you're milling. We're playing enough redundancy that we'll be okay. But if you're nervous to play a card like this, I completely understand. just play Carrion Feeder, or I'd say the best ones are Carrion Feeder, Alter, Woestrider, Yahenni. So just choose one of those. In fact, I'm just going to put in Carrion Feeder because, like, you know what? Let's go with the Woestrider. I like that it makes a like second blocker and another like thing to sack. And I like that we can get it back if we need to from our graveyard. It's a little expensive, but it's a nice option to have should we need it. So let's try Woestrider. So we've added the one we wanted to add for these sack outlets. Group Slug we want to add 2. So let's just knock that one out. Let's look at what we have in considering. And if I don't feel like there are enough good options here, we can take a look at Scryfall again and see if we could find something else. Blood Artist is okay, but it targets, right? So it's not the best because we would prefer something that kind of hits everyone. Blood Artist is really good in decks where you're going wide, like Edgar Markov. Blood Artist is like MVP because you've got just this huge board and it almost like provides you with board wipe protection because it's like, okay, yeah, I can board wipe you, but I'm going to take 20 if I do. So I'm not going to do that. It's kind of like you're holding them hostage and they can't cast their board wipe. But in a deck like this, where we're just making one creature, sacking it over and over, probably not the best choice for us. Marionette Apprentice triggers on any creature or artifact going to the graveyard. It hits everyone. It doesn't gain us life, which is a small downside, but I think it's a very good choice for us. So how many do we want? We want 2. I think Marionette Apprentice definitely makes the cut. It's very good. Bastion of Remembrance. This one gains us life, so I do like it for that reason. It's probably high on the list of ones I'm interested in. We can also consider the Room from Duskmourn that does the same thing as this. It doesn't make the 1/1 when it enters, but it has the same effect. And then the other side is, it's the same as Bastion, the same effect, except we don't make the 1/1. But then in exchange, we get that other side, the Awakening Hall, which for 8 mana does a Rise of the Dark Realms impression for our graveyard only, which can be really good. That can like end games, and it's uncounterable once the other side is in play. I mean, they can counter it with a Stifle, but most people aren't running that. So I think this is a good choice. I think Vein Ripper is very good. We could consider that. This is just very, it's just like Blood Artist, but being 2 instead of 1 is huge. Massacre Worm is like only with their creatures dying, so this doesn't work quite as well as we want it to. Talion, even though we're not talking about draw engines right now, I think Talion was already close to making the cut in the previous build, so I think it makes the cut now when we're looking for a new draw engine. So let's put him in. I like him a lot. Okay, so I think it comes down to either Bastion. Purphos is a little pricey. Let's go with Funeral Hall. I really like this card. The 8 mana part is not a good rate, but the fact that it's tacked onto a card that we already want to be playing, I think makes it great. Okay, so we added our 2 Group Slug cards. Let's flip back to what we need. We already added our sack outlet. All right, let's look at counterspells / protection. We're looking to add 2 pieces, probably one of each, but they sort of work interchangeably, so we can consider both in tandem. Let's take a look at protection first. So I use protection, as you can see, in a couple different ways. Like Maze of Ith is not the same as Malakir Rebirth, for example, and March of Swirling Mist and Slip Out the Back. These 3 sort of all fit together, but Maze of Ith is a little bit different. So Maze of Ith is a great card, but I think we don't want to bother with it in this deck. This deck cares a lot about hitting its land drops and using its land for mana, and without Urborg, Maze of Ith is a little bit more dangerous for a deck builder, I think. So these 3, though, are great because all 3 of them can protect Sauron in different ways. So Malakir Rebirth is a phenomenal card. It's really good in this deck. If people are spending a turn paying Sauron's Ward and then you drop a Malakir Rebirth, that is just like so devastating for them, right? Problem is, if they exile him, if they're like using a Swords to Plowshares or any other exile effect, then all of a sudden this doesn't work because it doesn't die. So that's a big danger. It is great at protecting against board wipes, and it can sub in as a land if we need it to. So I think we want Malakir Rebirth. It's just a nice flexible option for us. I also really, really like Slip Out the Back. It's one of my favorite cards in Magic. This is an underappreciated and underplayed card, in my opinion. It's so flexible. It can protect your commander for just 1 mana with phasing, which is huge. It means Psych Rift doesn't work. Farewell doesn't work. What other spell protects your commander from a Farewell or a Cyclonic Rift? Slip Out the Back does both of those things, but it can also function as a temporary removal spell. If there is a creature that your opponent controls that's stopping you from winning, say they only have 1 blocker and you can just one-shot them with your commander or with a huge orc army, Slip Out the Back gets you there. You will be surprised how much that comes up. This card is absolutely fantastic. Highly recommend you try it out. It is such an all-star for me. March of Swirling Mist, very similar. We're not going to play this one because I think we're not playing the free blue cards package, but in general, this card is a huge overperformer, and I would recommend you look into it for the same reasons I described as Slip Out the Back. All right, let's look at the counters that we're currently not playing. I think I want to add probably just 1, since we added a couple protection spells. We've got 4 right now. I wouldn't mind having 6, to be honest, or even 7. Let's just see what we have here and see what we might be interested in adding. So these game changers, of course, would be great, but I want to avoid them. And Deflecting Swat, I don't know why this is not a game changer. It should be, and I would treat it as such. Force of Negation is in a similar boat. So these 4, given their price and their just stature in terms of impression that cards make, mean I'm going to avoid them, and same goes with Pact of Negation. So these 5 we're going to skip over. Flusterstorm it scales with the power level of your game, so I think we're not going to bother with that. All right, so we've got the OG. Counterspell is great. I mean, you can't argue with 2 mana counter a spell. No restrictions, no non-creature nonsense. However, double blue in a 3-color deck, not always perfect. Sometimes it'll work out for you, but sometimes it won't. This is a maybe. I just want to see what other options we have. I don't play a lot of Negate, but I do like it. I think it's a good card. There's a few on here that I might want to see in considering too. I like Delay. I think Mana Leak is an underappreciated card. This card doesn't get a lot of love in Commander because, to be honest, there's just a lot of good counters, but I think it's a pretty good one. I also really like Memory Lapse. Like Delay, a little bit worse, a little bit different. Okay, so Delay counters any spell, but it gets removed from the game with 3 time counters on it, and it gains Suspend. So it is kind of like Haven Interrupter, if you're familiar with that card. It kind of puts it on delay for a few turns. If you're delaying a counter spell, then all of a sudden it's just a straight up counter because, yeah, they can cast their counter spell on their upkeep, but literally nothing can be on the stack unless something totally zany happens. So delay just straight up counters a counter spell. And a lot of times it can stop, some cards are very situational, and if they have to be cast on their upkeep instead, they're just not going to work. Or they're not even going to make it to their upkeep because you're casting this to win the game, for example. So Delay is a great card. I definitely want to consider it when we're looking at what we could potentially add, and it's a good budget option as well. Mana Drain, we're going to skip due to price. Mana Leak, counter a spell unless they pay 3. This is going to work pretty often. It's not always going to work, and there are going to be those times where you're like, dang it, I wish I had a regular counter spell. But I think, try this card out. I'm not going to play it this time, but I've played it before, and I think it is a usable counter spell. And you don't see a lot of it, so you can kind of get people. Memory Lapse. So this counters it, but it puts them on top of their library instead of into the graveyard. So they're going to draw it again and be able to play it on their turn, but sometimes the tempo swing that this gets you, and it removes a card draw from them. It blanks a whole draw step. If they're recasting their commander and then you memory lapse it, they get the unsavory decision of either putting their commander on top of their library where it might get milled. In fact, if we were adding memory lapse, I might also add the Altar of Dementia as our sack outlet versus the Woe Strider. I kind of like that idea because that's cute. We can, mill it off the top after we put it there with a memory lapse. We could also run something like Scheming Symmetry, which is a dual tutor for us, tutor for someone else, but they both go on top, so we can mill it off the top with an Altar of Dementia. It's a sorcery. That's too bad. Because if we could cast this on end step, find our Altar of Dementia, and then draw it, and then just mill the card we gave them, that's kind of hilarious. I don't know. I'm kind of loving this idea. I think I'm going to go for it. And this is the fun of deck building, right? Like you just you're going through, you realize like the potential of some weird little interaction. And it's probably not going to come up all the time, but I love finding an excuse to play Scheming Symmetry. It's one of my favorite arts of all time. I've assigned Sebmakitten like Scheming Symmetry numbered playmat. Let's do it. I think this is cute. We'll play that. We'll play Memory Lapse, and we'll play Altar of Dementia. And it won't work perfectly. We can't tutor the altar and then, unless we have a way to draw also, right? But I still like this. I think it's cute. And then let's cut the Woe Strider. Whoa. So what were we doing? Oh yeah, we're looking at counters. So we added one, and we added a couple protection spells. I just want to finish looking through our options here. Invert Polarity. I've literally never won the flip with this card. I've cast it probably 10 times. I don't think I've won the flip a single time. But, you know, someday. I really like this card. I think let's play it. I want this card to be more played. I think it's good. One thing I'll mention about the Invert Polarity is it's not just a win-win. You might think like, oh, you win the flip, you steal a spell, you lose the flip. At least it gets countered, right? But if you're trying to stop a board wipe, this card is not going to help you because, well, unless you lose the flip, right? Because then, then you're like, please lose, because if you steal the spell, it's still happening. Yeah, so that's the downside for this card, but I still like it. And now we're at 6 counters, so I think we're in good shape. The only other one two I wanted to talk about are Mystic Confluence. First of all, this is cool because it has the Lord of the Rings version, so major points for that. And in general, this is just a great card. It's super flexible. It can do a ton of things. Just a very strong card. Definitely test this if you've never played it. It's excellent. If you're going to play a 5-mana counterspell, this is a great one. And then Spell Swindle is a card that has really impressed me when it's been played both against me and when I've played with it. If you counter something 5 or greater, you kind of get refunded all that mana right away in treasures. They don't come in tapped. And in a deck like this that cares about making and sacrificing tokens, I think this is a really good and cool option. I'm going to put it in for now. So that puts a little high on counters. I think that's okay. I think we do want a lot of counters in this deck. We might end up needing to shave one at the end, but I'd rather start off with what we want, and then we can come back and revisit at the end. We already looked at, removal is one that we definitely want to look at now. So we were at 7, and some of these are like not super reliable. Mayhem Devil, for example, Goblin Bombardment. These are great if we've got our engine going, but they're not just solid removal. That being said, we have 6 board wipes, so having more pinpoint removal is good, but it's not necessarily like critical. Let's just take a look at what removal we're not playing that's in considering and see if any of these deserve to make the cut. Deadly Relic's phenomenal. I just want to avoid running it because we're trying to reduce the power and price of the deck, but otherwise you should probably be playing this card. It's really good. Same goes with the Bowmasters, and it's thematically appropriate. I'm going to skip it for now. Resculpt's a card I love. Yeah, they get a 4/4, vanilla 4/4. Who cares? A vanilla 4/4 is nothing in Commander, especially when your commander is a 6/5. Like, who cares? And this exiles any artifact, any creature. This can hit the 1 ring. That's huge. Let's add it. I love this card. Shadow Skull's nice. I don't think we want it. Downgraded Edict is great, but we have a lot of board wipes already. I think we're good on everything else. The one I might consider is Liliana. I'm not like a huge fan of this card. I know people like it. It's just a little expensive, a little unreliable, especially all the tokens people are making. I don't know. This doesn't always get the job done in my experience. I think I'm happy with this number. It's still a little low, but like I said, we've got a lot of board wipes, and counters kind of help too in this regard, right? Countering a spell in the stack is like removal for blue. So I think we're okay there. Lastly, we've just got draw engines and card draw first. We already added one draw engine, Italian, which is a card I absolutely love. This card does not see enough love in Commander. Play this card in your blue-black decks. You will not be unhappy. Just name 2 every time. I mean, not every time. You should consider naming 3, depending on the mana values and power and toughness of opposing commanders, and if they're not already in play. But generally, I'd say 95% of the time, name 2, number 2, and you'll be happy. That is the number, the juicy number. Just name 2. If you don't know what to name 2. Let's look at other draw engines and card draw that we're not playing. So I'm just going to skim through real quick and call out ones that I think are worth mentioning. Painful Truths is a really good one. 3 mana, draw 3. Very good rate. Definitely high on my list. It's at this point that I feel like we should probably take a look at the curve. Yeah, so right now I think we've got a lot of 3s already. I don't want to add another 3. And adding maybe like a little bit more on the top end might make sense at this point. Let's see what our options are. So, no, let's skip the 3s. Mystic Confluence is okay. Stinging Study, I think, probably deserves a spot here. Anytime your commander is at least 5 mana, I think this card is worth it. Ours is 6, so it's like a 5 mana instant, draw 6. Seems really good. Let's play it. I also really like Dig Through Time, but I just don't know if we need another big spell like that. And let's just skim through these. I think we're good without these. The one I would consider the most out of these is maybe Phyrexian Arena or Morbid Opportunist. Fairy Mastermind's quite good as well. I mean, Morbid Opportunist is pretty good because once we've got our engine going, it's like drawing us a card every time. Let's go with that. It's the most on theme. It's the lowest price. I think it's a good choice. Although any of those 3 I think would have been fine. Call the Ring. This card's a little situational. I don't love it. So I think that we're good. How many lands did I say we needed to add? Let's just flip back and look at that again. We needed 16 land. And we only have room for 11 right now. So we are going to have to make some cuts. Actually, maybe we added some land by incidentally, like via some MDFCs. So what did we add? We added Malakir Rebirth. We need 15. We only have room for 11. So let's add the 15 we want to add first, and then we'll make cuts as needed. In general, I like to count the MDFCs as like half a land. So this number already included a couple MDFCs. So I think getting this up to like 37/39 is a good spot. And then we've got some like land cyclers like Lorien Revealed, Ponder and Preordain pretty much are like a land. Knight's Whisper kind of can like sub in as a land. We're in a good spot with 37/39, I think, meaning we need to add 15 land, which is what I said. So I want to make sure I'm going to switch to types and tags and make sure that like I'm running all of the reasonably priced good dual lands. And I have a list actually published in my Discord. So if you're not a member of the Discord, plug for that. Join and you can see it. I've got it pinned in my Discord, a list of what I feel are the best land cycles. So join the Discord so you have access to that. So we're running all 3 things I'm looking for in order are fetch lands, number 1. Dual lands we're not playing, so that's fine. We've got all 3 fetches that are on color. We can technically, in a 3-color deck, play 9 out of the 10 fetch lands, but that's reserved for a little bit of a higher powered deck list. I think running just the 3 on-color ones is fine. Okay, so I can see we're missing 1 pain land, but I'm going to just go in order of my list. So fetch lands, number 1, dual lands we're not going to play. Shock lands, we've got all 3. Battle bond lands, we've got only 2. So let's add the missing one, which is we've got red, black, we've got blue, black, we need red, blue, which is Training Center. And if you don't know the names of these, I'd recommend going to managathering.com. This is a phenomenal website that can like help you with all the land cycles. You know, you could do it by color combo, you could do it by cycle. Great site. I use it all the time. Highly recommend it. All right, so we've got the Battle Bond lands, Surveil lands. All right, we've got all 3 right now. The Undercity Sewers is $24. Oh my god. Can you believe it? Let's just leave it for now, but we might shave these if I want to reduce the overall price of the deck a little bit, but I don't know, I might not do that because we've already brought it down pretty substantially. What else? Pain lands. So we are missing one. We've got red, black, we've got blue, black. We need also the red, blue one, which is, don't tell me, Shivan Reef. Okay, next, slow lands. I think we're going to skip the slow lands. These are the innistrad lands that come in tapped unless you've got 2 or more other lands. We might end up adding one of them just for like the most important color combination that we have, which is going to be blue-black. And that's where we really need to like emphasize our colors, but like the slow lands don't help with the early drops. These are the cards we care about casting early, specifically Ponder and Preordain. Reanimate, not so much. Scheming Symmetry, definitely yes. This is a card you want to cast on turn 1. You know, just lets you and someone find a soul ring potentially. And I think that benefits us more than it benefits. I mean, it sucks for the other 2 players, but whatever, you're playing to win, right? Scheming Symmetry, so cool. Love that card. So anyway, we'll skip the slow lands, I think. Bounce lands. Do we have any bounce lands currently? I do quite like the bounce lands. I think we just want to run 1, but I do want to run 1. So let's add the one in the important color combination. So Jameer Aqueduct. The bounce lands are great because they kind of stand in for 2 land drops, right? Because like you can keep a 2-land hand with a bounce land because you can play the bounce land on turn 2, and then you can play the land that you bounced on turn 3. Yeah, you're going to have to discard to hand size on turn 2, but who cares? Like, seriously, that almost never matters. In fact, it can be an advantage sometimes. So just don't worry so much about discarding and milling. I think that's a common mistake for new players to make. All right, bounce lands, I think we're good. Channel lands. The only one that I would want to run in this deck is probably Otawara, but I think we cut it because it was a little pricey, so we'll stick with that. Pathway lands, probably reserved for 2-color decks. I don't love them in 3 colors, although if you have them and you don't have a lot of these other lands, by all means run them. They're certainly good. They're better than basics for sure. Verge lands. The Verge lands are phenomenal. I think we want all 3 in here. Hopefully they're not too expensive. It's only going to suggest the ones that fit our color identity, so I'm just typing Verge and I'm finding them that way because I don't have these memorized yet. Let's update to cheapest, see how much these are. Right, the Verge lands are from 5 to 10, getting a little pricey already. I'd recommend picking these up now, or you're going to find yourself in a boat like this one, where you could have gotten this Undercity Sewers for $6, and instead you're now paying $24. Lands are always the thing to invest in. If you're going to buy any cards, any singles, I might make a whole separate video on this, on like, priority order of what to invest in to build your long-term Magic collection. I think that's a topic that hasn't been covered in nearly enough depth. And as you know, I make in-depth videos. All right, what else? Filter lands, we're not going to bother, and Horizon lands. Okay, I think we're in good shape here. We've got other like multi-purpose fetch lands. Prismatic Vista is phenomenal, but it's very expensive. So I think, yeah, $30. Is that the cheapest? Too bad. Needs a reprint for sure, so let's not play that. That's expensive. We could play Fabled Passage, and that's $5 or less, so that's a good one. This one is good because the land can come in untapped as long as it's your 4th land or greater. But I wouldn't ever run Terramorphic or Evolving Wilds. Those are just not good enough. All right, so we are at now 31 land. We need to add 8 more. Let's just make sure. I'm going to switch back to regular type. 8 more would get us to 37, 39, which is what I said I wanted. So good. So we've already got 1 of each basic. So let's look at where we need to bolster up now. And before I look at these percentages, I just want to look at what our early drops are and what's important that we cast early game. So Blasphemous Act, we're not casting on turn 1. Shocker. Viscera, not very important to cast on turn 1. It's fine. Like, I would cast it if I had nothing else to do, but it's certainly not important that we're going to like skew our lands for it. Glory Revealed is colorless, and it gets us an island. An island can be any color because the shock lands that we are playing and the surveil lands are all counting as islands, at least the ones that are blue. And we have both the blue-black and the blue-red ones. So Lorien Revealed can get us any color land that we need, which is fantastic. And if we draw it late game when we're flooded, It's a 5-mana draw 3, which is not great, but the flexibility is what makes this card fantastic. Ponder and Preordain are definitely cards we want to cast on turn 1. We can keep a sketchy 2-land hand if we have a Ponder or a Preordain, because we can ensure that we're going to hit the stuff we need afterwards. Or not necessarily ensure, but close to it. All right, Reanimate, we're definitely not casting early, so far we just need blue. Scheming Symmetry is nice to cast on turn 1, but we don't necessarily have to. So that's a little bit of a point for black. These counters and protection spells we're almost certainly not casting turn 1. Dark Ritual is a card we might want to cast on turn 1. That costs 3 that we might want to cast on turn 1. Morbid Opportunist is pretty medium. I don't know if I would Dark Ritual this out, but I would definitely Dark Ritual out a Black Market Connections, a Worn Power Stone, a Palantir, Crowded Crypt, Coalition Relic. The Altars, probably not. So there's a handful of cards we would Dark Ritual out turn 1. Often we'll just use Dark Ritual to cast SAURON on turn 4, though. A little bit toward wanting black mana early, but not that important yet, still. And then everything else, Mystic Remora is a card we would want to cast on turn 1. This is a great card to cast on turn 1 and just pay for it every turn until like turn 4. You don't always want to do that play pattern. Like if you've got mana rocks, then maybe don't play the Remora on turn 1. But just running this out on turn 1 and paying for the first 2-3 times is a really good way to start off the game. So definitely something to consider. And so mainly blue is what we're wanting early so far. Let's look at the 2 drops. Baleful Strix, blue-black. Great card to play turn 2. These cards we don't really want to just be playing out there on turn 2. I would say don't do that unless you have a very specific reason for it. You don't want to expose these cards. They're your win cons. Or not Nightscape Familiar. Nightscape Familiar is great. We definitely want it on turn 2, right? Night's Whisper definitely want on turn 2. These cards we'd want on turn 2 potentially. So I'm only seeing blue-black so far. Oh, and black here. Very strong card on turn 2. So Bombardment, not that important. Okay, and by turn 3 we should have the colors we need. So really it's blue with a slight emphasis on black, definitely not red. So now that we know that, let's look at our percentages. So this is like the percentage of the costs in our deck. So very few red cards. We already have like a decent amount of red production. I think we don't need to focus on red at all. In fact, we could potentially even cut the single mountain we're running, but I don't think we'll do that because we are playing the Fabled Passage. So we want to be able to grab that as the single mountain if we need it. So in terms of a ratio, like this is how I like to look at these. We've got 30% of our mana symbols are blue, and our production of blue mana is 48%. So I'm going to just flip over to Sheets and pop these numbers in. I guess we'll list red here, but like I don't really care about red. So this is percentage. This is percentage of symbols. This is production. So we've got 30 to 48. I'll show you what I'm going to do with these in a minute. 42 to 55. And 13 to 45. So the ratios. So we'll do this as a ratio, which is production over percentage of symbols. So as you can see, we've got a ton of red. We've got very little red and we have a lot of production. So we're already in very good place in terms of red. The fact that our blue is higher than our black is good. So I think we probably just want to add an equal amount of blue and black with maybe a little bit more of an emphasis on blue. And then we could also consider adding like the blue-black slow land. I think would not be an unreasonable thing to consider. So let's flip back and say we wanted to add 6 land, was it? So let's go like blue, 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 black, black, one more of each, I guess. Okay, and then one more land. So I think let's reevaluate the percentages at this point. So we're 30 over 50, 42 over 53. Okay, so we added more of an emphasis on blue, We could just add a final swamp as the last one, or we could add the blue-black slow land. I think that's a decent choice too. I think that should be relatively inexpensive. It was reprinted at least a couple times. So yeah, $3 for that. Okay, so this brings us up to around 600. I'm okay with that, but we still do have to make 4 cuts now that we've got the lands where we want them to be. So let's take a look at where we are in terms of the types and tags. So we've got 6 board wipes. I think Vandal Blast is on the cutting block. I just don't like to play Vandal Blast. I think it's really good. So I don't know. It's kind of mean, but we're playing SAURON, so like SAURON's kind of mean, right? I'm going to put it in sideboard. I'm going to put, I really like to do this way when I'm trying to make cuts. It feels less bad than just saying I'm going to cut this. I'm just moving it to the cutting block, which will be the sideboard for now. And then once we've got all the stuff that is potentially being cut into the cutting block, then we can like add back in what we want from there. And then once we're at 100 cards, that's it, we're done. We can't add anything else. So let's just skim through. I just want to look at like the grand totals and make sure I don't see any like major standouts in terms of something looking really high or low. These all look good. Removal's a little light, but it's fine. Mana ramp's a little heavy, especially with 5 treasures. We could certainly cut a card from here. Spell Swindle, you know, it's an option. Let's look at the curve again. I'd love to cut some 3s, so that's something to consider. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's sort by mana value. This is a good way to do it when you're trying to make some final cuts. Just start from the top and look to cut from there. So these top end pieces, this isn't really mana value 11. It's more like, and we can change this if we wanted. I can make this like just 3 because that's how we're going to be casting it most of the time. But that just adds another 3, which is like a little yikes. All right, mana value 5s. I don't really want to cut one of these because we don't have that much top end, which is okay. But like, I think I'm happy with all of these cards, so let's leave them. All right, these I'm very happy with all these cards, so let's not cut there. Here is definitely where we need to cut, right? 15, 17, boom, 22. This is too many. So let's see what is cuttable from this list. So definitely not, if it's like for sure I want it, you know, I'm going to stay. This is not for sure Fabricate. We already want to consider cutting tutors. It's an expensive card, so could be cut. Invert Polarity, it's a little color intensive for this deck. Could be cut, potentially. Morbid, could be cut. Palantir, it's too thematic. I can't do it. It's one of the worst cards in the deck, though. You could cut it. Windfall could be cut. So we're down to 99. That's great. We get to add a card now from our list of potential candidates from the sideboard. But let's just keep looking through. Let's look at the 2s, just skim. These are all looking fine, all looking good. I like everything. Memory Lapse is part of our little combo thing. I like that. Just to be clear, like this is not going to work out all the time, but if it does, that's cute, right? Alter plus Memory Lapse. I love it. I really like the Spell Swindle idea. I had never considered this card for this deck, but it's actually really good. If you have Mirkwood Bats in play, this represents 10 damage to all opponents, right? If you counter a 5 mana spell, if you counter a like huge spell, it's like possibly just GG. Okay, so we could cut Scheming Symmetry, but I'm not going to do that. I'm liking all of this stuff. I'm liking all of this stuff. I don't want to cut a land. This is already sort of on the low end, in my opinion. I think people should play more land. I'm running a little less than I would recommend for most people because I'm playing Ponder and Preordain. I'm playing Night's Whisper. I'm playing Lorien Revealed. I have ways to ensure that I'm getting lands, but you don't ever want to miss a land drop. Missing a land drop is so devastating. So like do anything you can to avoid missing a land drop, really. We could cut Dak Faden. It's kind of a mean card, but you know what? If someone's playing a turn 1 Soul Ring against us, that's kind of a mean in and of itself. So fight mean with mean. All right, let's stick with this. This has been a long video already. We get to add back one of these. Let's not make it one of the 3 drops. That really only leaves us with, well, either way, we're going to be under 600 if we cut either of these. I'm talking myself into it. Let's cut the tutor. To be clear, this is way better. I'm just trying to make this deck a little less powerful. We don't want so much consistency to find the 1 ring. We could cut Tezzeret and play Fabricate instead. We could cut Tezzeret also and just play Vandal Blast, but I think one consistent way of finding the ring is not terrible. Let's go with this, play Vandal Blast. And there you have it. I'm just going to finalize the list, see where we landed, and then we'll finally wrap this up. Okay, so here are our final numbers. I'm just going to hide all of this working stuff. All right, so our bracket went down one. Huzzah. Our cards stayed the same. Makes sense. Game Changers 10-1. Huh. $2,900 difference equals this divided by this. Down 17% of the original cost of the deck. Pretty good, I think. Planeswalkers stayed the same, creatures stayed the same, sorceries came down a couple, instants the same, artifacts up 3, enchantments down 1. None of these really matter. It's all about the categories, but it is interesting to see that everything was pretty consistent. Land stayed the same. Our average mana value went up 1.16, which makes total sense. We cut a bunch of free cards, you know? And just in general, the higher the power your deck is, the lower the mana value of your deck will be on average. That's a pretty fair assumption. It's not always going to be true, but most of the time. So I'm glad we kept the land count the same, and we also increased mana and ramp by 1. That's nice. It helps offset this a tiny bit, right? So +1 ramp, +1 draw engine, +1 card draw makes sense because we're -6 tutors, right? Board wipes the same, removal up slightly, counter protection down slightly, and then sack outlets and group slug up accordingly. And let's see, our curve changed. Obviously, no zeros, which is a little sad, but it's okay. It's the nature of reducing the power of a deck. Our 1-drop stayed the same, which is great. That's a good sign. Our 2-drops went up, which is good. You know, everything went up a little bit, except for 6s and 7s, which each came down 1. So everything's pretty consistent, you know, like it's nice to see this. It makes me feel like we did a good job because I was kind of shooting for this, especially in the categories, but the curve I wasn't paying as close attention to. So the fact that everything came pretty close to how it was, I think is a really good sign. I think it means we did a good job. And let's flip back, take a look at the final list. So here's how we ended up. I'm going to put the link to the original deck list and the brand new deck list in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to run some practice hands now, and then I'm going to play a game with this deck. I might make that a separate video because this has already been quite long. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Drop me a comment, take a minute, write something. I don't care what it is. Like, it really means a lot for me to see comments because it tells me that like it's worth it. Like, these things are a lot of work for me. I do a lot of preparation in getting ready for a video like this. So let me know if you liked it, if you appreciated it, if you want to see more in this series. I can do more videos like this. So let me know in the comments or let me know in the Discord. Join my Discord, link in the description below, and check out my Patreon. It's still brand new. I'm building it out as we speak, but it really is meaningful for me to get support and encouragement from people, either with words or monetarily. It helps me get to my goal of like quitting my day job and opening my own LGS, which is something that is really important for me and something I want to do in my life. So thank you all for your support and helping me get there. I love you. I appreciate you. And stay tuned for some mulligan practice and then a gameplay video with our brand new downgraded SAURON deck. Thanks for watching.